Hi, Yaz, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
The Ives Academy, everyone is fantastically at this time celebrating International Women's Day. And I straight away thought it'd be fantastic to ask you to come along and speak with us because I absolutely love your sound. And also, I love its integrity, purpose, and inspiration. On the jazzman.com, your music's been described as rich, powerful, colourful, exciting, and highly evocative. So I really must start with just asking, what inspired you to play the trumpet and to compose music?
So, my grandfather, Terry Brown, was a jazz trumpeter in the 1950s. And I found him very inspiring. And I found this instrument, the trumpet, very intriguing. And so, when we moved to the UK when I was 9 years old, there was an opportunity to learn a musical instrument at school. So I naturally chose the trumpet. And Terry gave me my first ever trumpet lesson, and he got me playing the C major scale in my first lesson, which was amazing. And, I fell in love with the instrument. He would play to me, jazz records, old jazz records, and all sorts of things. And, it really sparked my interest in the love of jazz and all sorts of things. I mean, and also my mum, she was a ballet dancer. So she used to play to me all sorts of music. She loved Stravinsky. She was also a big reggae fan. So, I was brought up on a lot of music. Yeah. And then I went to all the music center bands. I studied at the Merton Music Foundation. So, yeah, I played in the jazz band and the concert band, and we toured Europe. And, it was a really, really nice education. I never imagined composing until my early 20s. Um, I didn't think I was capable of composing. But when I graduated from the Guildhall, I had this urge to write something personal, to express myself in my own way, tell my own story. And that kind of started my explorations into how to write music that's original. When I really started to evolve as a composer was actually thanks to the Tomorrow's Warriors. They saw potential in my writing, and they commissioned me a couple of times to write music. And so, without much experience, they kind of they had faith in me and threw me in there. And yeah, and
Yeah.
it's led to loads of other things since then.
So do you feel that, like, with your compositions, that it's about your relationship with the trumpet and your composition sort of being hand in hand, or do you think of composition in an independent way away from your performance?
I see them very connected. Most of the time, I gather my ideas by first improvising on my trumpet. So it's very connected. Obviously, other times I'll find other ways of finding inspiration. But yeah, they're very connected to me. It's everything I write is very personal. So yeah, there's a connection for sure.
Yeah. And did you study at that point in time? Did you think, I want to study this in a specific way, in a formal way, or was it like an evolving, exploring way as you developed your composition?
Yeah, definitely evolving and exploring and, going into things blindly, not really knowing, kind of learning on the job, which, we as musicians and composers, I think a lot of the time do, thanks to being given commissions for things. I'd never written for a string quartet before. And I was asked to write a piece for Ligeti quartet. It's thrown in the deep end for that, but it makes you
Massive, yeah.
learn. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. And I hear you've developed or created or designed a quarter tone flugelhorn. How did
Yeah.
it sort of come about, and what's its structure and sort of adaptation or development?
So firstly, I applied to the LSO Sound Hub scheme, and my idea was to write music that would enable me to really delve deeper into the blue notes of Arabic music. So, I mean, the quarter tones, very human sounding, sounds. So I thought, okay, yeah, I want to play a quarter tone flugel. How is this going to work? So I went to the guy, Lee McKinney, who makes my trumpets. His company is Eclipse Trumpets. So I went to him and said, can you make a quarter tone flugel for me? He had no idea how to make one. And so there was lots of trial and error and lots of swearing and getting very irritated by me. But yeah, we made it. I mean, well, he made it. I tested it, and yeah, it's quite a unique instrument. And then I had to write for it, and that was another challenge, you know, trying to work out how to write for an instrument that can play quarter tones against Western tuned instruments, you know, like a jigsaw, working how these things work.
Have the other instruments also developed intonation in order to match, or was there sort of pleasure in a conflict or contrast between the two? What was the sort of process?
So I wrote for, in this piece, a violinist, a vibraphone player who doubled on marimba, a bass clarinetist, myself, and percussionist. So the violinist could, yeah, bend the notes and play quarter tones, which was really helpful. So that meant I could write melodies that were doubled. But I had to think very carefully about, for the, you know, the vibraphone, for instance, how am I going to so basically I had to avoid some notes that didn't, like, that weren't too close, and it worked. So it was just kind of like, yeah, working out how tight can I get these intervals without it sounding really sour.
Yeah,
So
I don't
yeah.
know what you feel about this phrase, but for me, when I'm looking at composition, I always consider it's like molding a pot. It's sort of different angles of stimuli and molding what you have. And I don't always have a sort of an end destination, but I'm molding it, and out of that can sometimes become a couple of different directions. Is that similar to an experience you have as well?
Yeah, I think so, all the time. Yeah, it is definitely sort of, yeah, molding and experimenting and reshuffling things around. Yeah.
I'd love to hear about your 2019 album, Polyhymnia. It's voted Album of the Year for 2020 Jazz FM Awards, which is pretty massive, and made Best of Year in many lists, garnering many rave reviews. So what about the core influence and inspiration behind or within this work?
Okay, so the album is a celebration of female courage and determination, and sharing these women's stories with, you know, a wider audience. And for me, this album is personally more outward looking. So I'm, you know, making a contribution. I'm being inspired by their lives and telling their stories, whereas sort of my previous albums have been more about concentrating on my my background. So it's an interesting, yeah, and different way of writing for me. There are 6 movements, and all inspired by, yeah, wonderful women that I felt I resonated with at the time. So they are Haifa Al Mansour, who is the first female Saudi Arabian film director. One of her famous films is called Wajda, beautiful film, everyone should watch it. And then we have Malala Yousafzai, who I think we all know, an advocate for education, fantastic, brave, wonderful person. And then 2 civil rights activists. One is Ruby Bridges, one is Rosa Parks. And then we have the suffragettes, and also Barbara Thompson, who is a great saxophonist and composer.
Massive influences. Absolutely huge. Do you feel music can connect with people in a fundamental sort of essential way, that sometimes other mediums work or function differently? Do you feel that music has a way of connecting or enabling opportunities of communication or connection and all these kind of things?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, music is very special, and yeah, it brings people together. You don't have to speak the same language to enjoy music, so you know, it's a wonderful way to bring communities together. And I know it sounds very cheesy, but you know, it can bring peace. But you know, it can also be political. You know, you can express your views. You can send out a message. One musician that just always makes me cry, it's just very embarrassing, is Kenny Wheeler. His music and his playing just, it touches me. And yeah, I can't stop sobbing whenever I listen to his music. It's really annoying, but you know, it really touches me. It means something to me. And I think music is very powerful. And I think we've well, me at least, I suppose, I've realized you can't really take music for granted, because during this, you know, this, all these lockdowns, there's been no music. And then you realize, hang on, we need musicians and composers, because music is on, you know, the TV, on your computer games, on your Netflix or whatever. It's always there. So it's an important part of everyone's lives, even if they don't realize it.
100%. It's so utterly encompassing from every walk of life in which we go about. Music either has a sort of a primary or binding or background purpose or role, from TV to performance to education to communication to, it's 100%, totally agree. Oh, later on, we're going to play your Ronnie Scott's solo jazz and electronics performance, which I must say, absolutely love. It's something I find fascinating. And it's a real listening, it's like a real journey through layering soundscapes, and has been termed psychedelic Arabic jazz, intoxicating and compelling. What led you in this compositional direction?
Okay, it's quite complex, long story, all sorts of things happening. So I suppose I'll start at the psychedelic jazz description. So for those who don't know, I write music that is inspired by Middle Eastern music and jazz. I fuse those together, and I hope that reflects my mixed heritage, because my father is Bahraini and my mum is British, and we have this, you know, history of jazz in our family. And then the electronics is something I slowly started to experiment with, and that's thanks to working with people like Radiohead and These New Puritans, and experimenting with lots of different weird boxes with my friend Jason Singh. And yeah, I just realized that all these effects units just adds extra colors to my acoustic sound, and it just adds another dimension. And this is really kind of, it's changed the way I write music and the way I perform. And it's been, yeah, a really good experience actually, and a great journey, and I'm always learning more about how this kind of thing works. And yeah, so and I've been building, because of lockdown, I've done quite a few solo performances, so I've had to step up my game and learn even more about electronics and making backing tracks for myself, because solo trumpet is a bit I don't know, it's very one-dimensional, obviously, you know. So I had to think creatively, like, how can I make music that sounds sort of encompassing and kind of wraps it around you, the sounds around you. So,
Yeah.
I've improved my logic skills, and so that piece on the Ronnie Scott's performance, um, I made a track from previous improvisations, and just kind of fattened things out using different plugins, and then playing on top with additional sounds. So I use a chaos pad and an eventide pedal, and a vocal processor which harmonizes things here and there. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, it works is the conclusion. It sounds fantastic, and it is encompassing. You don't feel that there's something lacking or missing, even though there's just you on the stage. The overall whole sound just comes together as this sort of full palette of colors and sounds. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. It must be nice being in that situation of being independent as well, because obviously we love our colleagues and we love working with people, and that's so much part of our process in the land of jazz and in the land of music. But in where we've been through recently, it's learning how to do that without a full band. And yeah,
I do miss playing with my bands, but you know, something, it's good to learn new skills for sure.
Exactly. And other ways of sort of creating sound.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it being International Women's Day and week, I mean, I say that about my birthday. Actually, I always think, why have it for one day? Let's make it a whole week. And we could make it a whole year, would be good. In fact, every year would be good. But in the meantime, for International Women's Day this week, there are literally countless female jazz composers that exist out there. And so kind of out of this huge collection of people, can you name some names that you think people should check out and listen to?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like you said, there are countless amazing female jazz musicians, but I think, so I'd like to recommend 3 musicians that I adore and I work with, and I think don't get enough recognition for their talents. So pianist Alciona Mick, singer Brigitte Baraha, and saxophonist Tori Freestone. They all compose music and they're all amazing, not only wonderful players, but really kind, beautiful people. Yeah, definitely. But then there are so many other musicians. I'd like to recommend people to listen to Josephine Davies and Tamar Osborne. She has a band called Kolukuta, which is a very cool band. Loads of other people. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. So recommendations all around of loads and loads of people to listen to. Do definitely Google those people. And then once you sort of start going down that train of Google, then who else works in whose bands and who else is there to listen to? It's a massive process of exploration. I think often we can sort of create our own canons for ourselves, can't we, where we tend to listen to the same people. And I think it's exploring and finding out what other people are doing is always so interesting. So overall, I mean, Yazz, it's fantastic to speak with you, and thanks so much for making time to come and tell us about your music. Everyone, you've got to have a listen to Yazz's stuff. It's fantastic. We're going to just sort of finish off by playing your Ronnie's solo jazz and electronics performance. So enjoy, everyone, and thank you, Yazz, for being here.
Thank you for having me.